What's up, everyone? Welcome to the Metal Maniacs Podcast. I'm your host, Jay Ingersoll, and I'm here, as always, with my co-host. Wait a minute. It's not Mod today.
Get a load of this guy.
Mod,
Mini Mod.
Mod, you've changed quite a bit since the last time I've seen you.
I've been bulking up. I got a big lifting competition.
Cultivating mass.
Yeah. For sure.
Cultivating mass, Dad.
Well, I'm here with my co-host, Jeremy Mcclary. Thanks for co-hosting with me today, man.
Stoked to be here. Thanks for having me.
So Mod's been replaced. You'll never see him on another episode again.
Oh, no.
Totally kidding. We love you, Mod. We'll see you soon. But, yeah, Mod couldn't make it today. He had some other obligations that were more important to this podcast, which I call bullshit. But
traitors. Traitors.
But we're sitting down today with some special guests. Like I said, all of our guests are special on this show. But we have quite a history.
Yes,
more
sir.
than kind of we probably even know, but some guys that I hold on a high regard and respect as far as musicianship and just their grind and what they've been doing for a long time. So welcome Phantom to the show.
Thank you.
Thank you.
How you guys doing today?
Pretty good.
Yes, sir.
Thanks for making the drive out here. I know you got a little hike to get here on a fucking
it's not too bad. I mean, we got second winter here, but it hasn't been drive hasn't been too bad. If anything, it's just honestly, I was telling Cody this on the way here. I was just like, man, I'm like half running on fumes because like I didn't eat last night. I stayed up until like 3:30 in the morning, and I'm just like, I'm the architect of my own disaster. Is what I'm trying to say. So I'm just like, man, I'm just running on like no caffeine. So that's why I have this goofy Arizona, and I wanted to get like McDonald's breakfast because it's the essential sometimes. Sometimes it just hits. I don't know why.
I was almost there too, but this guy's like, I was like, he's gonna judge me because his body is a temple or a wonderland or something. And I was like, literally about to text him, hey, I might run a little late. I'm gonna pick up some Mickey D's, and I was like, he will ridicule me.
His
body is a wonderland.
No judgment here, man. No judgment here.
Well, you're cultivating mass, so
I'm cultivating mass.
Yeah, that's how you get bigger.
James doesn't do good takes when we track unless he gets Taco Bell first. So
yeah. Taco Bell is a ritual for some reason, man.
Taco Bell slaps, man.
I don't know what it is. Sometimes you just get that cheesy gordita crunch in you, and the cheese just fuels everything, man. I don't know what.
There's a connection here. I'm glad I'm here today.
Hey, I like the bell.
I feel like we're like spirit creatures.
Yeah,
right
kindred spirits.
We are.
Yeah.
The bell rocks, though. I will fuck up some bell, that's for sure.
You looking for an endorsement?
Yeah, I am.
Yeah.
Every time,
Live Moss.
That little bell.
Every transition will be the Taco Bell. Ting, next segment.
So why don't you guys just introduce yourselves, what you do in the band, so people can get used to like your voices and what they saying. So you want to go first?
Sure. Yeah.
you're the most important.
Yes, exactly. It's nice to be acknowledged. I'm James. I play guitar, do vocals in Phantom.
Okay.
I'm Cody. I play drums. I do a lot of the recording and some video editing in Phantom as well. And not with us today is Michael, who does all of our graphic design and plays bass.
Cool, cool. I got to meet him at the show. He seems like he's a pretty cool dude.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
So I know Jeremy listened to some of your music. I went through it, so I got some stuff to kind of comment on and talk about. Got a bunch of questions for you guys, so we'll just let it roll if you roll. I know you're running on fumes, so thank you so much still for doing that.
We're refueling.
Yeah,
now.
there you go.
Yeah.
Perfect. So I'm going to read this real quick just so people can, and I wanted to ask you about this. So Phantom, emerging from the kaleidoscopic depths of the sonic cosmos comes Phantom, born from cosmic collision of mind-altering psychedelia and earth-shattering heaviness. This enigmatic ensemble weaves together a sonic tapestry that defies conventional boundaries, transporting listeners to ethereal realms and sonic enlightenment. So when I listen to you guys, I'm putting a little bit of black metal in there, a little bit of doom, a little bit of rock and roll, a little bit of sludge, a little bit of stoner metal. So all of them words, that's what I came up with after that. So, but I like the wordiness. So who wrote that?
Yeah, well, I was guided.
Yeah, so
It was
when you
guided.
put fast food into him, that's what comes out.
Yeah, man.
That's the bell talking
It's
right
like
there.
it's like putting a coin into an arcade machine. I mean, sometimes you get the high score, sometimes, but so that's where we got with that one. It was partially guided. I mean, I got to be honest, AI is not the worst thing because I was like, oh well, chat GBT or whatever. I was like, I just want to get like at least some sort of like a guidance for a bio because I was just like, I don't even know where to start. And I just put in, I don't even remember exactly what I put in because it's crazy because like there's some of those like AI, prompts and whatnot are like aware of just the general internet. So like even us with having almost nothing, presence, well, there's a little bit, but it was still like pulling from like our Bandcamp or Spotify profile and stuff like that. So I was just like, well, I'll start there and we'll see what we can develop.
Yeah. That's cool. I like it. I mean, it does explain your band because you guys are hard to put a thumb on. It's not like you're just one thing. You're like a lot of things together. I mean, and I really enjoy listening to it. Honestly, when I was going through your tracks, let me ask you, this is my first question real quick though, because you guys have, it's the Celestial Scion, right? That came out on 4/20/2023.
Mm-hmm.
And then we
Smoke it
have,
if you got it.
yeah, so then we got Dreadfather demo 3/25/13.
Yes.
That's what it says. So there's a 10-year gap if I'm doing my math correctly.
Yep.
Give or take.
Yeah. So
That demo was under a different performing name at the time.
So yeah, it's a complicated timeline. Well, I shouldn't say it's not complicated.
No, it's
it's
not.
just that there's a story, I guess, behind it.
Let me interject then. Maybe the first question, just tell me about the inception of the band then. I guess that would probably get us to the answer why there was 10 years difference.
Yeah, well, real recently, kind of, I was doing, a few years ago, I was doing more like fill-in kind of gigs, just keep my chops happy and, keep myself present around here, doing some like, just fill in gun for hire kind of stuff. And it was fine. It kept me playing, but I reached a point personally where it just got to I wanted to be making music. I knew that, but it wasn't scratching the itch. And then it's just like, I wanted to be doing it with my homies, like with the people that I have a lot of history with. And, both I at the time was kind of busy in my work and so was James. And I got a hold of him and I was like, hey man, like, I don't really want to be doing this with anybody else other than like, somebody who I've got all this like vast history with. And like, we were performing back in 2013 with the late bass player Matt Carey, who's passed away now, as Mayroon's Dagon, and we wrote that Dreadfather demo together. And I said, hey, those are our songs, like we could just honor Matt and play those and like kind of use that as a springboard to write off of. And we were also recently, a couple years back, in a band called Old Black with Addison Eilers from Tiny Tree, and Mike played bass in that. And so it just felt good to incorporate him because, again, like I've known him since kindergarten, you know what I mean? Like me and James went through all the jazz program that Shores has to offer together. Almost any band that I've really toured or played a lot of live stuff with had been with James. So it just kind of all came together and we decided to rework and rewrite with some more maturity the demos. So we're actually in the process of tracking those in their like new existence right now. But yeah.
Cool. So I know we kind of go way back with Infinite Design. It's kind of funny how you just jam with the guys that you've always jammed with, even though like we all know each other, we could jam in a band together or whatever. We could have tried something out. You and I even talked about jamming at times, but it's just like he's still playing in Pain Divine with Bob, who they've played together forever. I mean,
Time of Play,
back in the day.
We
Back
were
in
even
the day.
Densmore
I'm still
back in the
jamming
day.
with Larry and Adam, the guys I've been jamming with for almost 20 years now. And then you guys have been playing together from Vandal, known as Myth, and then Old Black, and then now Phantom. So it's just kind of funny. You kind of find the guys that you vibe with, even though there's lots of other musicians that you could try other things, but it's just just one of those things where there's that connection there, you know. So
even we were kind of hiring ourselves out too, because we were both backing musicians for the Nick Scott band briefly. We were both an Omega experiment for Dan Wheaton as well. So yeah,
Was he an Old Black? I was gonna ask.
Who was that?
Dan?
no,
No,
I thought he played bass.
no,
No.
that was Mike, who's currently in
I thought he
Phantom.
filled in or something. Maybe I was mistaken.
no.
Dan played bass for Ephus
Ephus.
with
With-
Addison and Alex.
Am I thinking of Gavin Black?
yeah,
Never
I think
mind.
that's
Gavin Black?
what you're thinking of. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I was
Yeah.
gonna say. I mean, Dan playing with Ephus was, I mean, forever ago. That was probably before. Well, it might have been just towards the beginning of Vandal.
2006 maybe.
Yeah,
Yeah, that would have been
2006,
around Vandal
2007.
Known as Myth.
Mhm.
Pretty sure.
Yeah, something like that. But it was no. I mean, playing with Dan and playing with Nick was always fun. But you know, it was one of those things where like you want to be able to expand and play your own music too, because I mean, in both of those guys were writing pretty much all the music. I mean, they're basically just not hiring out, but you know, they're asking people they know to fill in for all the other spots, especially with Dan, because his you know, music is just so massive and he has so many layered parts. And
Yep.
I mean, there was only so much that even we could do as a live band without, you know, he still would need backing tracks and stuff to do all kinds of crazy stuff. And
Yeah, there would definitely be times where I was like, "Hey, I got the song, but I rewrote a couple of the fills because I can't play the thing that
Yeah.
you recorded."
Oh, yeah. Well, the first time that I when he first asked, I listened to like some of the guitar parts, and like I was just like, man, I hope I hope he's the one that's playing like all of the like leads, because there were just like these crazy ass solos, just like just stuff that's just rips all over the place. And I mean, the guy is crazy talented.
Yeah.
But
Oh,
I
yeah.
was just like, when we got to the first actual practice, and then like he was going over like what parts and stuff, I was just like, thank God.
You were. I remember. I want to say that was when Omega played with Periphery. I think you played
Yeah.
that gig, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a Frack the Gods tour or something.
Yeah.
There was like,
Yeah,
were you
it was-
playing drums?
Yep, it was them, Textures, the Human Abstract, and us. And there was
Contortionist, too, I think, played.
there was something
Yeah.
else
Oh,
because
wow.
The mixtape.
Steph Brock, the drummer for Textures, there was one of Dan's songs had just consistent like double kick, like
Mhm.
5 minutes. You know, that's what I'm doing the whole time. And we're 30 seconds into the first song, and one of my bass drum spurs fails, and so that thing's flopping around on me. Homie, the drummer from Textures, this international rock star that didn't have to give a shit about the local band, jumps on stage, gives me the metal horns, holds my kick so I can keep playing, and fixes my fucking bass drum spur for me. And I was just
Damn.
like,
He's a real one.
yeah, dude.
yeah.
I
Yeah,
was like,
dope.
you did not have to care at all. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
That sounds like Führer. That album rips though, and that set was good. And you guys,
oh yeah.
and that's why we can't be. You said we could be in a band together. I'm like, I don't
Everybody
know.
has their place.
I'll be
and,
exposed. I'll be exposed very quickly. So no, you guys got chops and you guys rip.
Thank
Oh,
you.
thank you. Yeah, I mean, it's always fun. I mean, you know, I feel like being able to like really play in different genres, like helps you develop too as like, you know, a general artist.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, I always felt like, you know, that's kind of like you were saying, how we don't try to like stay in a certain pocket, you
Mhm.
know,
Yeah.
because I don't know, I just think it's more interesting to have, you know, a diverse portfolio and being exposed to something that's a little different and pulling from all the stuff you listen to. And
That's very wordy for us never being able to write one style.
yeah,
No, but that's cool, because that's the one thing. I'll be honest. Sometimes I don't. If you guys were just a doom band, it would be hard for me to listen to you guys' stuff, because it would be 7 minutes of
Yeah.
Because after 2 minutes, I'm like, does this change? Can I take a nap? Wake back up? Same song on?
Yeah.
What's
Yeah.
going on? But with you guys' stuff, you keep it interesting, because you break down in like the little southern sludge, almost like some down type riff or
Mhm.
something like that. And I'm just like, this is cool. Like I told you when we listened to the song, I told Nick, I said, these guys are taking a lot of real estate on my podcast because they want me to listen to 7 minutes of the song. Jokingly, you know,
Yeah,
hey,
yeah,
everything's
no.
welcome here on the Metal Maniacs podcast. But I was just, for me, bands that write super long songs, you and I even had this discussion before when you were on the show. It was like, you got to do it right if you're going to do it. But I enjoyed all 7 minutes of that, and you guys kept me on that ride and interested the whole time. Hit me with that badass solo at the end, and then it was cool because when I seen you guys live at the fest, like that really stuck out to me because I had already was familiar, but I was just like, oh, this is that part, and you killed it, both of you guys. I mean, it was an awesome performance, so you guys did a great job with that.
Oh, yeah.
So
Thank you.
Yeah, so I really like your band.
Can we dig
buddy.
into Celestial Scion a little bit? Can
Yeah,
we
go
talk
right
about
ahead,
that
buddy.
release? So,
Yeah.
so on that point, you know, like, and I might say around Demimonde.
Usually it's demi-monde.
Demi-monde.
It's some weird French, you know, stuff, man.
Gotcha. But listen to that, you know, like to Jay's point, like it's obviously a longer song. It takes you on a journey. But two things. First off, there's riffs. So I'm hooked, right? Like, so the riffs, like that's the key. Like I can listen, like I fuck with Wind Hand, Monolord, like Sleep. I mean, all that stuff rips. And like I can listen to a 20-minute song as long as there's riffs. If it's a sick riff, just keep it going. Just, I can live with that. But no, it's sick because listening to it, I'm like, okay, starts off, we're in that like stoner doom, you know, Wind Hand, Monolord vibe, right? Kind of like, this fucks, this is heavy. But then you guys kind of get to this point where you go off this cliff and you kind of go into like this. It's really interesting though, because to everyone, like what we're saying, like it flows so naturally. It does not feel like jarring. It's not like, oh, here's a black metal part. It's like, well, shit, this kind of still sounds like a doom song. But I'm like, I sense like you can tell there's like almost like a Wolves in the Throne Room or like an Alcest or Alcest, I'm not sure how you say it.
Oh, yeah.
But this melodic black metal vibe, you can just tell like your technique and everything. Like you can just tell like shit, like it's more the chords and the technique.
Yeah.
But it's still like a doom stoner song.
Yeah.
And that's badass. And then it turns into almost like this. It ends, it kind of comes full circle with the clean singing. Who does the clean singing?
Mostly me. Yeah.
Mostly, like it's kind of got that like ISIS, almost like Neurosis, kind of like post metal.
Yeah, the only way I can engage my diaphragm good and get the push is to like have a note behind it. Kind of. I've worked on it for a while, but like he's got the gravel.
Yeah,
I don't have the gravel like he does. So.
But like that whole song, I mean, like to me, what was just interesting was like all the bands I just listed that I would use as a point of reference. I feel like are radically different. But that song, it just sounds like Phantom. It just sounds like you never listen to it going like, oh well, here's the death metal like breakdown, or here's the blasting black metal part. Right. It's like, it's interesting. I was just talking to another guy and he was like, well, I just write parts that fit my band, but I'm like, well, how would this other really weird band like Melvin's play it? And like,
oh nice,
and do that. And I'm like, I feel like maybe that's what you guys are doing. But like when you're writing, like, are you like what does that look like? Because like this is not easy. Like this, like what you guys are doing is not easy. So I'm guessing there's some intentionality, or like there's like a lot of like, and maybe not. Maybe you guys just, you know, shit riffs and it's just badass all the time. But that's
knowing James, we know he can do that.
Yeah,
so,
like I said,
mean,
these guys got chops. But like, I just, you know, I guess my wondering is like, you know, what does that look like when you're sitting down to write out Celestial Scion? And trust me, I know me and Jay both want to get into like the studio process, because that's something too. Like I am very impressed with is the quality of the recording. But anyway, like when you're writing these songs, like what does that look like?
Well, at least with this one, you know, like Cody had mentioned before, that we had kind of been talking for a little bit, and you know, we started with that old demo just so that we had a bass jumping off point. But I mean, I hadn't played in a band since Old Black. You know, I just got busy with life and you got busy with work and stuff. But in between that time, you know, I just still was messing around, and you know, I had riffs and stuff that I had floating around. And I think like around that time when we were getting like back in the rotation of, you know, jamming and doing stuff like that, I had those things already kind of like floating around, and I was just like, well, you know, we'll take this part and we're going to take this part and we're going to see how they kind of meld together. And I mean, at least two of them, I kind of like came most of the structure kind of already there, and was like, this is what I have. What do you think?
Yeah.
Where do we go from here?
We're pretty good at that like mental communication, and it's like as soon as we start just like I'll lay some shit down, I can hear parts like instantly for riffs that he brings. I'm just like, okay, there it is, you know, and then I'll start getting really amped and excited and be like, oh wait, after that, we got to do this, and then it kind of just explodes from there. But like back in the day in like Vandal, it was a regular intention to write parts above our playing ability.
Been there.
You know what I mean? And this has been more like, let's get that ear candy. You know what I mean?
Let's write a good song. Like we're not so worried about it being like, man, we're like busting our asses up here ripping these. It's more about like what's gonna make this the best song.
Yeah.
Perspective.
And as
matured.
We'll see.
As cliche as it is, the importance of the space between the notes.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I had listened to some of the other episodes, beforehand, and one of the things that you guys have brought up before is riff soup.
Yeah.
And like, I definitely would say that was Vandal was definitely guilty of that, because it was just like my thought process, at least when I was writing in that, is I was just like, we're gonna play some really weird stuff, and I don't know if I'm gonna be able to play it right off the bat. We're gonna work up to that. But I always thought for some reason it was more interesting to like do different riffs and do different stuff a lot rather than repeating stuff. Because I was just like, man, like, I don't know, we're gonna approach this like free jazz, and we're gonna do some real weird stuff, and people aren't gonna understand it for some reason.
There's a vocoder.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're gonna stand out. Yeah.
So like,
And then
after we were, Vandal kind of fizzled out, and I wanted to. Well, we played briefly a 3-piece called Ninkazi. It was a very brief stint while Kenny was in California going to
the
Musicians Institute.
Yeah.
So we were like, we still want to play, but we can't play Vandal because it's just like, Kenny's such a root part of that.
Mm-hmm.
So we're like, well, let's try writing something a little different. So this other band, it was just Cody, myself, and Troy, the keyboard player from Vandal. And my thought at that point was like, I just want to do more straightforward, more just kind of riff oriented, rather than us playing like, complicated lead lines and this and that. And I think that
is kind of where it started.
Yeah, I think that's kind of where that whole mentality developed, and like, we should write stuff that makes more sense and is more cohesive.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I think with all music, and then just maturing, we've all gotten older since those days. I mean, even when we were in Infant Design, we did everything that you said. We're going to play above our level of actually playing and almost not be able to play it. We're just going to jam a bunch of shit together because we want to be fast and heavy, and we want to shred, you know. And there's a time and place for riff soup. Bands do it well, but it's just, if there's a band that has 50 minutes of riff soup, for me, it's hard to get into.
Oh, yeah.
Some bands do it well, some bands, but you got to have something kind of call back. I just feel like if you can write a killer riff, why not bring it back? Even if the drum beat's different underneath, or, you know what I mean? Like, just have something that you can hang on to. And that's just me maturing as a person that wants to hear songs, because I was guilty of it too. And actually some of our, not to put it on me, but like, we just wrote a song that was purposely riff soup, but it's 2.5 minutes and it's just a blaster from front to back.
Nice.
Well, all of our other shit's just verse, chorus, verse, chorus. So we have one on the batch of 8 songs that we wrote. Yeah, exactly. So it's just like, just to have that creative outlet. So I don't want to think that I'm like shitting on riff soup, but like, so there's a time and place for it,
What he's saying is he's a hypocrite because he writes riff soup himself. So.
When Jay
says that, just say,
let me just walk it back a little bit.
I have, but I like, if that's your intention, then cool. If it's done well, then you can do it. But
yeah, no, I mean, it's not to talk down on any of that, that writing style or anything. It's just that, like, man, I don't know that I'm that level of creative anymore, if I'm going to be perfectly honest. Just like,
because most of that was like you doing some weird guitar workout, and then Kenny being like, I think I can do that on bass, and then me being like, do that twice as fast.
And by the way, we're gonna do rotating 10/8 into 11/8, and then it's gonna come back, but we're gonna turn it into 4/4.
Yeah, but then sometimes it's just like, it's like what feels good. Right? So if it feels good, just go with it, because when you're thinking of all those time signatures, or you're thinking like, by the time practice is done, you're just exhausted. Like, you're yeah, I didn't like work out, but I felt like I did because I'm mentally just tired, and I've done that so much too, where I'd leave practice and my brain just melted because I'm trying to think of all these parts. But if you just get in the room and just jam, and I love what you were talking about, and then what you were kind of feeding off of when you said you'll just bring something and you'll show it to him, and you say, "This is what I have." I just feel like all the bands that we've had on here, all the ones that are the most successful, they treat it as a band. No one's like, "Here's my 8 riffs. Can you play this, dude?"
Right.
Like, you know what I mean? It's like, "Hey, I got this stuff. What do you want to do with it?" And I just love that about being in a band and interviewing bands and talking to bands, because all the best bands that we've had on there talked about that, how it's like, dude, for you guys it's 3 people, for you it's 4, you know, whatever. But it's like the 4 of us get together, we all got ideas, and we just want to like feel it out and see what sounds good, you know?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I just feel like it's the whole entire concept of the band, you know? I mean, we're not the Cody Vickers, you know, band or the
Well, I'm not the most important one.
Well, I mean, it's nice to be acknowledged. But you know, it's just, I don't know. I feel like it just lessens the impact of being in a creative outlet if you're the only one that's, you know, inputting everything. And it's just like, it can also be exhausting if you're the only one writing everything. You're the only one, you know, having all of that control. It's just like, man, I don't know where some people, you know, get the actual creative energy. You know?
Well, and I think to that point, like, and not to make this about Dan Wheaton, but like when we talked about like Omega Experiment, like I know, I mean, he would say it himself, like that's a big frustration he does run into. Because my thing is like, I know when I write stuff, like it's like I love being able to bring it to the guys and like massage it out, or like have them be that like bullshit alert. Like I played this thing, because sometimes you write riffs and like they are kind of corny or cheesy sounding by them, but like but sometimes badass riffs are corny and cheesy sounding once you add everything else to it. So like, to me, it's like you play something, I'm like, hey guys, I have this idea. You need that sounding board of like, dude, that's whack as hell. Like, I love you, man. That shit sucked. Like, it was so weak, and like, nah, like, or like, and obviously it doesn't go like that, but you know, you massage out. But I'm like, to your point, I'm like, if like the option paralysis of like when you sit down and write stuff by yourself, like, or when you're demoing especially vocals, I feel like I don't, maybe it's just because that's not my wheelhouse, but vocals especially, I feel like when you're like, if you're like demoing and you're like, I'm gonna sing this line. It's like, if you don't have people there that can be like, that was cool or that wasn't, I don't know how you release that album, because I'd just be like, delete, take it again, delete. Oh, my vocals are fried. I'll go try again tomorrow. And like, you're just gonna nonstop. That the sounding board to me, it makes it way easier.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, I mean, I feel that specifically because I mean, when we did Mayroon's Dagon initially, I did vocals, but it was mostly cleaner kind of stuff. Like on that demo, the cleans are me, but doing actual like fry vocals and stuff like that was like kind of a new thing for me. The closest that I did before that was when towards the end of Old Black, we had separated with Addison at the time, and we were just like, well, we'll try and do some more shows and stuff afterwards, and I'll just do vocals. And that was like more me just first trying that out. And I think it's fun and it's very interesting, but it's like I still get pretty self-conscious about it. Like, it's at least in the, you know, when we're recording stuff, because live it's a little bit easier to have feedback, you know, but like in the studio you're just like nitpicky.
It's vulnerable. I mean, you're hearing every little like, I just yelled and like I just heard my voice crack, or like you can get in your head real quick.
So I mean, it's definitely, and then I feel like I tend to overthink when it comes to like writing lyrics and stuff like that, like creative writing, especially like in high school, man, I was garbage with creative writing, you know. It was just one of those things where I'm like, I don't know, I just never was interested, I guess, in that aspect of, you know, it. And then now doing it now, it's just like, all right, well, you know, sometimes I'll have stuff prepared, and sometimes like I'm waiting until we get like at least a working copy, you know, of a recorded song, and then I'll listen to it and develop from there.
Gotcha.
See, and I don't ever put any pressure on lyrical content because I don't really have anything important to say lyrically.
Well,
it's just like I usually find a cadence that works within the drum beat that I'm playing. I find, certain vowels that I usually do a process of elimination. It's like I don't want like a big E vowel there, an O vowel there, and then I just kind of fill in like Mad Libs and just see if something comes out.
Gotcha. I mean, just backtracking a little bit, I mean, with showing everybody stuff in the band, like you said, it gives you that barometer too, like is it good or bad, but it also gives everybody ownership in the band. So when you guys go out and play it live, it's your shit. It's not just James's, like you said, or Cody's band, you know, and like I'm just here to like, it's like our shit, right? So we're gonna go out there with a little extra oomph on it and really want to perform it because we made this together. It's our art, and I love that aspect of the band. So when you talk about, so you guys both do a little bit of lyric writing, then you come up with, well, that's cool too. So you kind of share that, share that as well.
Usually, I mean, we'll approach it usually that like I'll have a general idea of like where the the most of the lead vocal type stuff will be going. And then I'll be like, well, do you have any ideas for somewhere that you want to do, either stuff yourself, or do we want to do like a gang vocal type of deal, or, this and that, and we just kind of work around it in that way too.
I would only do gang vocals behind him in Mayron's Dagon back in 2013. I never took any foremost because I was having such a hard time separating my limbs from my diaphragm. Like you could hear the impacts in like what I was doing through the mic, and I could never really get it down. But that's something over the last like 4 years I've spent a lot of time trying to isolate from like my limbs or whatever, which has allowed me a little more ownership in my own parts and be naked out there. The breathing I'm still learning. There's a part in Demimone specifically where we come out of a really fast snare part, and then I go in, and it's like I'm at like a 40% almost pass out rate there live. So like,
one of the first shows, the first show that we had as Phantom at Skeletones.
I was there.
Oh,
yes.
Yeah, hell yeah. See, OG right over here.
I've been there since day one with these guys. I bought that tape and everything.
Hell yeah. The old was that the gold or no? That's
purple.
No,
the purple.
It's
Yeah,
a
that
purple,
iridescent
purple.
one.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I'm not a poser. I have a tape deck. I've listened to that sucker.
Just so
plenty
you
of
know,
times.
he paid Mod to be on this episode because he's your number one fan. So.
I'm like, please. I mean,
have you ever listened to the second side that it isn't even listed that exists?
I haven't.
Baked you out, not number one fan.
I'm not. No, I haven't. I've only listened to the one side.
So we did this thing with all of our.
Is there something literally on the second side?
Yes. So something that we did with just the tapes, both for the demo and also for Celestial Scion, because we were like, well, we can fit the EP or the demo on just one side. So we're like, doesn't make. I don't know. We talked about what to do. We were like, do we just repeat it on the other side so that like when you have it in the tape deck, if it'll flip and it'll just start it over. We're like, that's not that interesting. Let's do something different. So on both of those, we don't have it listed or anything, but we do like psychedelic noise tracks on both of those.
There's a 21-minute like cinematic epic with a bunch of like dragon sounds and like war shit going on.
Yeah.
I know what I'm doing this afternoon. I had because to your point, you listen to that one side and it's like, okay, that's it.
That's
Rewind.
it. Yeah.
Like I just would, because then I'd listen, rewind, put it away. We're good.
Yeah. We were like,
missing
we should do something that's more interesting than just flipping it over or just leaving it blank. So we were just like, we'll just make some noise tracks. And
I also think I offset them because I recorded every single one of those on like a crappy like Emerson thing. They sounded good, but like I think I did a 2-minute offset just because I wanted the ones that like maybe switched to the other side and somebody wasn't paying attention, and then it's like starts and they're like, what?
Yeah, where's that noise coming from?
Yeah. So we wanted to be able to like, I don't know, have some exclusivity with people who buy, because I've always been a major proponent for like physical media.
Yeah.
I always thought that like having something physical there is so much more interesting than just being like, go check out our Bandcamp, go listen to us on Spotify. Like, obviously that's the main, avenue that people listen to music now. But there's still people, that want CDs. There's still people that want tapes, vinyl. If you get into the vinyl and stuff, like vinyl is obviously having a major comeback. Tapes even are doing pretty decent.
Well, they're just so cheap to make and put out. And now, I mean, like I've actually, and maybe I'm just an idiot, but I've been really digging like listening to cassettes. Like I've there's a spot in the mall, static tape or not static. It was the music. Yeah. What's the music one? There's a music store in the mall, and I went in there and they actually had like an old Pestilence tape.
Oh, nice.
And then they had innumerable forms tape, and I'm like, what the hell? So I picked those up, and I'm like, tapes are kind of badass.
Yeah, man.
So I'm just saying, I'm the tape guy. Tell me your tapes.
That's I started a collection for tapes because for a while what it was is that my truck that I had before had a tape or just a tape deck in it, so I was just like, well, why not? I mean, there's some bands that I really like that only put stuff out on tape, and just because vinyl's expensive, and like for some reason, like some of them, I feel like they just feel like CDs are just like a thing of the past. It's I don't know if I'd say something like that because we had the discussion before because we were only doing tapes. We were like, do we do CDs? Because
you're metal, you're allowed to do CDs,
right?
I like having the
metal
CD,
bands
even though I might listen to you all on Bandcamp or Spotify or whatever, just because it's easier because my phone's on me and I'm at work. I don't have no way to listen to a CD.
Yeah,
but I have a whole collection over there, and I've been collecting them forever. So I love having the CD, or I love being able to look at the artwork and just it's kind of like a talking piece, what I mean? Like,
well,
check this out,
when we talked about it too, we were just like, CDs are also like having more of a resurgence because, like, the younger generation now, what it used to be is that like tapes were coming because we were getting used cars, and you got a tape deck, and you don't, it might not have a CD player. If the CD player is in there, it doesn't work, whatever. Well, now like since it's like a weird cyclical thing that. Now the used cars for people that are younger, just being able to buy their first cars, CD player is the old thing that's coming in there, So that's when we're like, well, let's start doing CDs too because there's going to be always a demand for people wanting physical stuff, and
we couldn't figure out how to record to a Tamagotchi yet, so
we're still working the kinks
Phantom
out
Tamagotchi. Here you go.
Yeah, we'll get the 8 tracks out soon.
Get the vocoder back out and just do it all in MIDI and
oh yeah, hell yeah, there we go. We can sell little those little toy keyboards,
like,
yeah, and you press record on that, and then we just play the tape right over top of it.
Now that's real black metal.
Yeah, exactly. Some real raw tracks
coming from the dungeon.
Sounds like Burzum's first CD.
Yeah, well, before or after prison.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
So you guys on the Celestial Scion, your song titles, there's only 3 songs, right? But like even your song titles just aren't like typical song titles. What is the Demi-Monde? What is that?
It's from this graphic novel from a guy named Alejandro Jodorowsky. He was a director. Well, he still is a director, I guess, but his biggest prevalence was in like the late 70s for the whole like midnight movie movement.
Okay.
But he did these crazy movies called like The Holy Mountain, El Topo, and he's like a surrealist, a guy from Mexico. And he eventually in the 80s, I believe, maybe 90s, went on to write graphic novels with this guy called Mobius, and it's a graphic novel called The Incal, and it's just this crazy, like, it's very Dune. So like the whole entire like writing process for it was he was going to originally do Dune in a movie form, and he had all these crazy ideas, like he was going to have Pink Floyd do the soundtrack, and he was going to have Salvador Dali be the emperor of the universe, and all this other crazy stuff. There's a really good documentary called Jodorowsky's Dune about it. It's very interesting. I would suggest checking it out if you have any interest in failed movies or big sci-fi projects, whatever. Anyways, it's from this graphic novel called The Incal, and Demi-Monde is like the half world. I think that's what the translation is. It's like a half world between realities or something like that.
Kind of like
Nice.
like purgatory.
Yeah, kind of like that.
So you were just inspired when you heard that, and you were like, I want to call a song that, or
I
mean,
think that when I had first written lyrics, because like writing the lyrics for it, I don't know, I have very like, I don't have a certain train of thought when I'm writing the lyrics. I kind of try and like just let it come
okay.
and see if I can structure from that.
We are historically horrible at making placeholder names that then
Yes.
end up just kind of being the name until the very end, and then being like, we actually can't call this whatever graphic title that I wrote on the whiteboard. We have to make a
the
different name
whiteboard
for
always
it.
has just some. It's usually the day that we write it. It's something that we had talked about before
okay.
the practice, because I mean, we usually will chill for like an hour or so before we actually get to practice, and then so like we're recording right now a single, and the working title that we had for that was, what was
It's D&D is for Jets Ranch Enthusiasts.
Yeah. That's the title on the board right now. It's not going to be the final title,
Right.
but that's how we keep track.
But
of
we
it.
both know what song it is.
Yes, we know what it is.
Right.
But you'll be like, hey, you want to rip D&D? And you guys both, you're like,
Yeah.
So, like, essentially, what happened was that I wrote the lyrics, and I was like, this is kind of like some spacey kind of, stuff like that, and I was trying to think of stuff that would fit title wise, and I was just like, oh, I just recently read this book, the Incal, and I was like, that kind of sounds cool, so I was just like, let's just go with that.
Mm-hmm.
So what I'm picking up is you'll name it something so you guys know what to name the song instead of song 1, song 2, song 3.
Mm-hmm.
You'll write the lyrics and then maybe the title comes after that. Is that kind of what I'm?
That's
Okay.
that's the general. That was kind of the
Okay.
flow for Old Black too. Except for Old Black, it was like, we're ready to press the CD. What
Yeah.
the heck are we going to call that song? That can't be called Cloud City or whatever. Like-
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, this newer one, I kind of have some working titles for it, even though I haven't written lyrics for it yet. But that's just stream of consciousness, I guess, is the way that those end up coming up.
Yep.
Yeah, that's cool. It's interesting how everybody kind of does it a little different.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'll try to just come up. I don't write a lot of lyrics, but I'll come up with something that I want the song to be about, and then come up with the title, and then I'll be like, hey. Have Nick or Larry or whatever and say, hey, can you write something like this? So sometimes I can be good with the titles. I'm the other way around, and then like the rest of the shit's on somebody else. Like I got the concept, and I think the title's really cool because it's not your typical like, oh, salt in the wound or whatever.
Yeah.
Like how many bands have that fucking title of a song? That's
Literally,
yeah,
yeah.
exactly. So I loved your titles of your songs. They were just very interesting, and just like your band. I know we want to talk a little bit about production. Jeremy and I were actually talking about that before you guys got here, and I know I had mentioned that to you before. But before we get into that real quick, so on the Dreadfather demo, I just noticed, so you did some of the clean vocal, because there's like a different kind of clean vocal that's not on this new Celestial Scion. I noticed that on there where it's like a completely different clean. I know you kind of have a little bit of the like shouty clean stuff on Celestial, right? But when you're talking about the Dreadfather, so was that recorded back a while back then too?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Don Carlisle was the one that recorded that album.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
And then so you did a little bit of cleans on that.
Yep.
And then you just decided to not do that on newer stuff, or is that something you're going to revisit? Or
That was when he was going through his Ozzy phase.
Yeah, exactly. I'm still going through it, man. Lost the glasses.
don't blame you.
Going through
Yeah.
changes.
But I don't know. I mean, I felt like fry vocals was something I was more interested in developing when we got back together. I had the thought of just continuing with clean vocals, and we could mix in harsher stuff along the way. But I don't know, like I think it was just a thing. I wasn't as a lot of the music I was listening to at the time when we were writing stuff, I was just like, it's not doesn't have that much clean. And honestly, part of the writing process, I was like, man, I gotta write lyrics, and then I have to come up with actual melodies to actually accompany these lyrics while I'm playing guitar and all this other stuff. And I was just like, that sounds like a lot of responsibility, man.
Yeah.
I don't know. I was just like, it's gonna be a little bit easier if I just have like, I don't want to say something more one note, but something that's, you know,
More
that's gonna be
primal or just
yeah, and I feel like it's just more. I feel like it's just I don't know how to say it. Just like I feel like I can get more aggression out of it.
like the delivery is just more.
Yeah.
You can lean into it more.
Yeah,
We'll
exactly.
Less
We'll
thought.
still play those songs occasionally live. We'll throw them into the set, and he still does what would be the clean vocals when
Okay,
we
cool.
do
Yeah.
perform those live.
That was
but-
literally my next question
Mhm.
because I only got to see you guys once, but I'm assuming sometimes you play more than like the 21 minutes of what
Mhm.
you have.
Yeah.
So you kind of play
Mhm.
some of the other stuff.
Mhm.
Cool.
I appreciate it. I just want to say, like, I like
Yeah.
that's something I love about it is like listening to that newer EP. Like, you're listening to it, and you're like, okay, this feels familiar. Like, okay, this is like some Doom stuff.
Mhm.
I'm familiar, but then your vocals kick in, and I'm like, okay, like this dude's into dissection, or this dude's into
Yeah.
like. you
Well,
know,
yeah, he had the shirt on.
That's
at
what I'm
the
saying.
show.
Like,
Yeah, man.
well, I was
like, cool fucking shirt, man.
Touche, Jay. I was being a little pandering. It's okay. I was like, this guy
Yeah.
likes dissection, so
Yeah.
I'm
I'm gonna
give
have
him.
to start looking
I'm gonna
into some like deals so I can start hawking them myself.
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah.
But no, I think, but that's to me what makes it Phantom, right? Is like hearing that, and it's not
Mhm.
like you don't just come in with like, okay, like these dudes like Candlemass, or okay,
Yeah.
cool, these dudes like, Monolord too. It's like, no, it's their thing. Like
Mhm.
they listen to their own shit and make their own things, and
Well, I think that's part of that interesting writing process is that, like, you know, obviously, like, we have very diverse inspirations for a lot of this stuff. I mean,
Any of my pedigree in black, doom, thrash metal is pretty much vicariously through James. So,
Gotcha.
like,
yeah,
you know.
I mean, I try and listen to as much as I possibly can. So I like listening to a lot of different stuff. So at least when it comes to my inspiration for writing stuff, it, you know, the it's expanse. But-
do we have time to dig into that? Can we get into that, Jay?
Yeah,
Can
we got plenty of time.
Can we get
man.
into the?
Yeah.
Or is that okay? Can we get
Yeah.
into what you guys like? So yeah, like that was something we wanted to go. Like, what got you guys like into metal? Like, or
Mm.
what like just influences in general? Like, let's hear a little bit about your background and your journey to this point musically.
I mean, we did, a lot of the high school kind of stuff, and we cut our teeth in jazz band originally. You had a blues background on guitar prior to that.
Well, yeah, I would say, I mean, when I first started playing guitar, that's a lot of what I listened to was, Pink Floyd and the type of rock bands that you're into when you're, 12, 13 or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, there's a lot of that, but I mean,
We were really into just real crazy stuff in the
Yeah.
Vandal Known as Myth days, like Mars Volta, Dillinger Escape Plan,
Mhm.
I mean,
Between
I
the
was-
Baird and Me, that kind of stuff was big back
Yeah,
then at the gates.
BT
and-
Bam was a big one. I mean, Colors came out right around the time that we were really starting to be more serious with writing and stuff. I mean, I was listening to goofy, weird shit, like, listening to, like, Behold the Octopus and, like, all kinds of weird jazz stuff, John Zorn. Well, like the stuff when I listened to, like, your guys' favorite vocalists episode, like, I would agree with Mike Patton because, like, that was listening to, like, a lot of weird Mike Patton, Phantomus, and the stuff that he did with John Zorn is called Moonchild.
Mm-hmm.
And, like, I don't know, all that stuff. Genghis Tron
Yep.
was a big one when
Yep.
we were in Vandal.
Yeah, because
Um,
that helped tie in what we like had access to with Troy and the vocoder and stuff,
Mhm.
Yeah, I
Mhm.
mean, that's at least, and in high school, I was just listening to, like, dummy stuff. I was a big Anal Cunt fan.
R.I.P. Seth Putnam.
Yeah, well,
Actually, fuck you.
Yeah,
I
I
was
was
gonna
gonna
say, I don't know.
I'm actually glad you're dead. Fuck you.
Yeah. I don't know if I'm giving him peace.
Yeah.
But I mean, just stuff like that. I mean, I was personally really into in high school. I mean, Ghoul a lot.
Yeah.
you know, stuff like that.
He's always turned me on to the more like metal bands, to whereas like I tend to gravitate through like playlists or whatever YouTube rabbit holes to more just like instrumental prog stuff. That's usually what scratches the ADHD part of my brain, which is the entirety of it. But
yeah, I was gonna say, is there just a part?
No.
So more of the jam type stuff. That's kind of what you're into, like the prog and jam and stuff like that. Huh?
Yeah, I mean, I tend to really align myself with drummers or musicians in general that like sound like them. Kind of like regardless of what project they're involved in. The first one I really latched onto for me was John Theodore, and he was originally in Mars Volta, but since then he's been touring recently with Queens of the Stone Age.
Okay.
But it still sounds like, it doesn't really just sound like Queens. It sounds like with him, you know what I mean? And like, so I get really into like, I do a lot of online lessons with Matt Garstra from Animals as Leaders. Like I bought a bunch of his stuff, so I'm like hella into that kind of stuff. Not so much, I dig on the Polyphia and stuff on that side of the fence, but like Car Bomb, Ed showed me they're dope, you know, just really any kind of crazy odd time signatures. That stuff really just scratches an itch that I just constantly have. So, but anything that James has brought to me and been like, hey, check out this playlist, check out these like, you know, bands. It's like I dig all that stuff. It's just more vicariously, like I don't find those on my own volition kind of thing.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Like,
but I mean, that's always good for like what brings to your band,
mhm.
right? Because you kind of both like different stuff, and then you just kind of meld it together. So that's always, instead of just four guys that like hardcore and then they sound like a hardcore
Copy
band.
and paste.
Yeah, exactly. So I know I really want to get into, we're not necessarily, we still got plenty of time, but let's talk a little bit about the production, because that was one thing that Jeremy stood out to him. That was when he came down here and we're talking a little bit before the show. We were just going over some notes and stuff, and he's like, I seen you had that, and I know I brought it to your attention before, but the, what would you call it, EP?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I
Because
think
it's like 21 minutes.
it's
so you probably call it-
20-ish,
yeah,
yeah.
something like that. So it sounds incredible, man. Like
Thank you.
did a phenomenal job
Yeah,
just with the production, the mixing, the mastering. I know you said you did it all. That's what it says here on your Bandcamp.
Yeah.
But yeah, to me, I was truly impressed just from, you know, producing records myself, and Jeremy also, because he knows what goes into actually making a good sounding record. And we were both floored by how great it sounded. So, you know, kudos to you on that. But tell us a little bit about that process and what that looks like for you.
Well, I appreciate that, especially coming from you, because I followed your whole Exit Door everything, so I've seen it all. So that, and you put out quality stuff. So my only thing, so I got into I was trying to do some custom drum building maybe 3-4 years ago, and I was trying to do this all-encompassing thing to where I was going to have a little studio set up, maybe have other drummers for other bands come in, shoot like playthrough videos for their bands or whatever. So I like just kind of got into just real guerrilla style recording, just kind of doing that. And then when we moved into my new house that I'm in now, there was an intention on making like a creative space. Like James had mentioned Kenny before. We had this member in our band growing up that his parents allowed us to make so much damn noise there, dude. Like we were listening to Dillinger Escape Plan in between the Baird and me and just making a bunch of racket in the basement. And that was like such an important space for me as a musician, and like I wanted to be able to provide that to my kids. So like it was like, I'm gonna make a little studio space that like they can use, I can use. I'm still pretty new at it. I did a solo album that I released on Spotify maybe 3 years ago under Colors So Vivid. And then this was our first recording for this. I do mostly direct miking on drums. I do like space pair overhead. For the drums specifically, I'm using a pretty snap together system. I should have just bought the Focusrite 18i20, but I have the 8i6. And then I feed the 4 line-in channels on the back with Presonus Bluetooth preamps. So I'm like getting a little bit of tube grit in there, here, and there. But with the drums, I end up putting those through Trigger 2, Stephen Slade's Trigger 2.
Okay.
And I throw in Get Good Drums Modern and Massive samples underneath it. So like sometimes it can be blended up to like, I don't think I go over 65% ever with, because I just really like I built the drums that I play, and it's the ones that are on the record, and it's like I'm proud of that tone, so I just kind of elevated a little bit with that. Mostly with James, we tried to capture both his science heads, and so I'm really nitpicky with the guitars to where it's like nitpicky but not. It's like I'll keep a more sloppy take because I enjoy a little bit of the human error in there. I think it adds something to it, but I'll make him quad track, and then I split his 2 amps on either side of the headphones, and then I'll use 4 different takes. So there's just like a little bit of like, he's maybe a little slower to get to that part. Maybe he's a little slower, but I feel like for our recordings, that's what adds to the taint, I guess. You know what I mean? Like the bottom end for Mike. For my own recording purposes, I bought a 2 notes La bass. It's the little stomp box.
Yep.
So we just go direct in with him on that. I think we used the cab sim that was built into that, but I also ran his signal. I doubled it and ran it through like a science.
To say the IR.
Yeah, the IR loader thing. And then I am super reliant on Isotope Music Production Suite 4.
Yep.
So I use Neutron 3 for most of the guitar buses. I think I used that on the drum bus. I used their Neo Verb. Used Nectar 3 for the vocal tracks. I run everything through Ozone 9 at the end of the channel, but it got to a point where I was bouncing some stuff off of them, and it was like my ears are fried because it's like I did all the tracking, I did all the mixing, you know, and then I did, at the time I had, you know, my car, a couple different Bluetooth speakers at home, you know, a couple entertainment speakers. The brewery I was working at had multiple PA systems that we would listen to music through on different sides of the building. So I had access to like a crap load of speakers to run these songs through to really be like, is it gonna sound good for everybody's like use case and stuff? And I feel like eventually I just got to a point where I was like, if you guys are good with this, I can't listen to these anymore.
Yeah, that's always been the fallback for me every time I've done a project. I'm sick of the fucking songs before they even come out. Like, I don't even want to hear them again. So, like, that's why I told the guys in Iron Sharpens Iron, I said, on this time, we're going somewhere else to record so I can just enjoy the process and fucking play my parts, and I don't have to worry about all you guys' shit either, and then hate the songs when they're done because I've heard them so many times. Like, 4,000 more times than you guys have heard them, and you're all like happy about it. I'm like, fuck these songs. Like,
and it's,
no, but I mean, you're doing everything right. I mean, just with the multi-monitoring going through, you know, and like blending, everything's kind of blended with drum shots now. Everything's, you know, why not use the tools that are available to make them beefier? And once you kind of just mix them in there like that, you know. So I didn't mean to cut you off. Go ahead. Buddy.
No, yeah, that's pretty much it. I've talked to a lot of guys that are like more collegiate level, like knowledge based on this stuff, and it's like I understand some of the stuff, but as soon as I start like getting too deep into like, oh, I'm gonna sidechain compression on this, and then every time the snare hits, everything's gonna drop out, and then I start doing these like little tricks that people let me in on. I end up like playing it back like the next day after I sleep on it. I'm like, kind of liked it before I was doing all that extra stuff to it.
You know, you talk to Addison, and he's a fucking wizard when it comes to all that, and he'll just talk your ear off, and you're like, dude, I got like 36% of that. Like, I'm not like that's you go so deep in that black hole that I can't even fathom it. And I'm like, sometimes I can just mic some shit up, and if it sounds good, it sounds good. Like, you know what I mean? Like, there's that weird line you walk where it's like, yeah, you can know all that science and try all these tricks, but does it sound good? And like, does the average guy that's not in a band or that doesn't produce really care? Like, if he can fucking rock it in his car, then why does you know what I mean? Like, there's that fine line. You like, it's cool to know all that stuff, and it's cool to try all those tricks, but is it necessary sometimes? I don't know. Like, and then you start fucking wrestling with yourself about it. Well, I didn't fucking sidechain this, so like, is it really gonna sound like shit, or is it cool? I don't know. You know. So I just always wrestle with that myself too. Or you're like looking up a new thing on YouTube that might make it sound better, and it's like, well, it sounded good to begin with. You kind of fucking it up sometimes if you just. Sometimes less is more with the music, with the recording, everything. I mean, back in the day, we still listened to Jimi Hendrix, and they had like 4 mics. You know, it's like what. It's about the performance at the end of the day.
That's what I was gonna say. Is like, if you got good riffs and good dudes playing those parts, and that to me is like the magic. Like, at the end of the day, it's like just I hope you had a good mic set up and you captured it. And that's to me oftentimes the secret. Not to diminish anything, as I will say, like the outcome, like what you're describing, like off camera because I don't want to bore people, but like I probably got some questions. We'll have to chat more because I mean, listening to it, like I remember watching the videos that you guys put, or not videos, but like maybe there was videos, but some stuff that you guys when you were recording. I remember watching that. And I remember being like, you know, it's not like you guys are in like a big warehouse with a bunch of space. Like you're in like a home
10.
studio.
Yep.
And hearing it, it was honestly like, and I don't want to use hyperbole or like pile on, but I'm like, I was floored. Like I was like, dude, this sounds like they were in like Sweden at some ranch and like for like a month, like tracking this out and doing that. I mean, it honestly is like top notch.
That's where the advanced went. We went to Sweden, hung out for a while, and then we came back and did the recordings ourselves because we were just like, we blew all the money.
No, and it's like, I guess I always tend to, especially with them and with him specifically, with his amp tone that he has that people usually geek out over live. It's like I just took way more than I knew I needed. It was like I don't need 6 mics for this, but I'm gonna set up 6 because what if that other one I put it out of phase and just like blend it in a little bit, and it's like, oh dope, there's that like high end that I was missing or whatever. So
well, it was a thing also when we were recording. Well, when we were with Addison and Old Black, he was doing obviously all the recordings then. And he would just go wild with mic placement for, recording guitars and stuff like that. Like, I specifically remember, because we were in our buddy Boo, we were in his basement. That's where our practice spot was. And it was a weird spot because it was all concrete, all hard floors. So, I don't know how he got any usable sounds out of that because it was just the death box. And I remember one of the mic placements that he had for that, he literally just pointed a 57 just directly at a concrete wall, and he was just like, let's see how it sounds. And it actually sounded kind of cool.
We ended up tracking Mike's bass with a microphone upstairs in the bathroom in the shower.
Yeah. Like weird, just weird stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know, we put a microphone outside, and it's just like, oh, let's get all the ambient sounds, But I don't know. I think stuff like that is real interesting. I mean, I don't know anything about recording, so this is just me talking out of my ass.
So I wasn't. We kind of ran into this because we're tracking this new song. We're kind of maybe gonna dive into the more singles format for a little bit, and then retracking some of the Mayrunes demos. Right now, I was like, I was just flicking through Neutron, and I was like, preset. And I went through 15. I'm like, these all make it sound worse. And then I had this flashback to when we were tracking before. I was like, oh yeah, I liked my raw ends so much without doing the presets that I just didn't use them.
So I click track or no click track?
Yeah. So where I've done the dumbest shit in the past, like Old Black, our first album, I recorded no click track, no scratch, humming the fucking guitar parts in my head for the whole damn thing. And I didn't want to do that again, which we've done, I think, in other projects before where I end up just free balling it and just kind of going. But no, for my editing purposes, I do full click track, tempo map if it needs it or whatever, because for their benefit, I do the fucking color coded markers and stuff, know. So but
what about so are you, James, are you playing the guitar through the amp? Is that how you're recording it? Or are you doing reamping, or what does that look like?
No, when I did my solo album, I took a clean out so that I could reamp, but all of his stuff it's either the Sennheiser 306, I use a 57, and then I use my I got these Behringer condensers, the B1 or C1, I think, that I use as my space pair overheads for drums, and I'll put those as near room and far room or whatever, but it's just grabbing multiple takes of his Science Hellhawk. What's the other one?
It's a Science Mother.
The Science Mother, and then we always track with his
for Celestial, we tracked with an Emperor 612 that I have.
A ported 612, right?
That it wasn't the ported one that time.
Okay.
It was the reg, because I have 2 612s. No big deal.
No big deal.
No big deal. Actually, it's a pain in the ass to pull those around to shows and stuff.
Yeah,
but
it's so badass.
It's awesome. I love it. But it's also one of those things where it's like, man, I'm definitely not 20 anymore.
Right.
Yep.
So
No, when I do my own recording for my own solo stuff, I reamp all the time.
Yeah.
I've got a bunch of VSTIs that I just plug in and go through, and Joey Sturgis tones or whatever, and kind of stuff like that. But yeah, he's such a gear head.
Yeah. Well, I want it to sound as close to what I would be hopefully doing live.
Right.
Mhm.
So like that's why I like to use just the actual amps that I would use live in the same pedal setup and everything like that. It'll sound a little bit different just because, the other, so like the two different 612s I have different speakers in them and stuff. And
Mhm.
so you're going to get those variances, and I'll dial them in a little bit different depending on where we're at and this and that. But I mean, I certified tone freak.
Mm.
I always am chasing that next bar.
And,
But
as long as I make something where I play it back for him and he gets that kind of like approving, like, I'm
Stank
like,
face.
okay,
Yeah.
I'm fucking in the right direction
That grumpy
here.
cat face.
Yeah.
well, let's talk. Can we talk gear? Let's talk a little bit
Yeah,
about
yeah.
what's going into that.
Yeah,
I'm curious about the narwhal.
Yeah,
And
man.
just in general, like you're just like you said, you're gearheads. Like where are you at? Where what's going into your setup? And
So right now, me personally, I'm using that Dunnable narwhal. It's
I drool every time I see that.
it's a guy out of California.
Sasha.
Yeah,
He
Sasha.
Was in Intronaut.
Yeah, he's in
in
Intronaut.
Yeah,
Which like fucking awesome band.
so sick.
But yeah, I'd been looking at them for a long time. I was able to try one out at Chicago Music Exchange because they carry them every once in a while.
I might have played that same one because I was there and I was like, I got it.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have a chance to play this thing.
I was hooked because before that I was playing. I had bought this aluminum neck. Addison plays one.
Yeah.
But I had gotten it from this smaller company called Bastion, and it's just the neck, and I put it onto an old Jazzmaster that our bass player Mike had sold me, and it was just a Frankenstein kind of setup.
Mm-hmm.
And I loved it. I still love it. It's got like the pickup is a custom wound and stuff, and it's awesome. But it weighs like fucking 14 pounds. It is so heavy.
And you're not 20 anymore.
Exactly. There was a time when I was I briefly, between Old Black and Phantom, I briefly jammed a few times with Rip Van Ripper,
Okay.
which I know you
Sick
guys
band.
you had them on.
Yeah, they're
Super
fucking
sick
sweet.
band.
Yeah, those guys
Cool
are
dudes.
awesome. I fucking love those
Yeah,
guys.
they'll
They're
be
really
on the show in a couple weeks. So.
nice. Yeah, I love those guys. I mean, we've known them for
Oh yeah.
early days with Old Black, and I still see Jeff around all the time and whatnot. But I jammed with them briefly for a little bit, and like we jammed for, I don't know, an hour or two, a couple hours, and I was sitting there and I was like, man, my back is killing me right now. And it's just because I had this 15 pound weight around me for 2 hours straight. So I was looking just at other stuff, and I saw that Dunnable had just recently announced they were doing this new shape.
Mm-hmm.
Because before that, I was thinking about getting as an R2, and it's like this weird kind of explorer-y kind of look. It's based off of an old Gibson called an RD,
Yeah, RD.
but it's just got like better. It's less boxy, so it's like just more aerodynamic,
Yeah.
and it's got a belly cut,
A little
and
more
all.
modern
Yeah.
looking, yeah.
And I was thinking about getting that, but then I saw the Narwhal come up, and I was just like, man, that design just looks so cool. The body shape, it looks much more ergonomic. And I missed out on the very first run that he did, so I was just like, I need to get one. I talked to him. The only one he had available the first time I talked to him was this like crazy one. It was like burled maple and these exotic woods, and I was like, man, that thing is sick. But it was like $3,800 or
Yeah.
something. I was just like, that's just not in the cards.
Yeah, you start talking exotic woods. That's what.
Yeah,
start
I was
talking
just,
exotic prices.
I was just, yeah, exactly. I was just like, I just can't do that. That's just not in my budget.
Right.
I got 612s to buy, man.
Exactly. Exactly. So I I saw
a
he
215.
what?
Or a 215.
Listen,
That's what Bob uses in Painted Vine. He's got a 212 115.
well, I used to have this
Right.
old Sun 215 that was a base cab, but it was just like massive. It was just
Ugh.
it was overkill. It was too much.
My back hurts just hearing you say
Yeah, unless
that.
you had roadies, that's
Yeah,
a no go.
It was ridiculous. We played with it a handful of times in like Old Black, and it was too much to move around. So, but anyways, I saw that and he had like a more streamlined version, like Exotic Woods. I think it's just it's a maple top
Is
with
it like
mahogany.
the D2 series or something like the like?
No, it's still a custom shop one.
Oh, it's custom shop still.
But it's just like he was doing a run of like 10 of them, where it's just like maple neck, mahogany body, and then you get to pick color and hardware
Okay.
and this and that. And I was like, sign me up. And I just decided, I saw he did a different I saw he put a different model up. I forget which one, a Cyclops or something.
Yeah.
And
Those
it
are
had
sick,
that
too.
it had that like metallic purple, and I was just like, that's the color I want, because I was just like, this is just a like I just wanted something that was going to be very just like cool and just like different. And for guitars, for the most part, I like stuff that's just like outrageous and just like unique.
Yeah.
And
Well, you nailed it.
yeah, so I was like purple, and then I was like, I'm going with the Regal colors, so we're going purple and gold.
Yep.
Classic. And yeah, man, I mean, it's probably the best guitar I've ever played. I still do have like an older Les Paul that I still play every once in a while, but the older it gets, the less I feel like I should be taking it out.
Yeah.
Those get heavy too, don't they? Them Les Pauls.
Yeah.
I mean,
that
yeah.
one's it's not light, but it's
Yeah.
it's more manageable than the aluminum one was.
Right.
Yeah.
It's, rather than being 14 pounds, it's like 12 pounds.
Well,
Yeah.
with the aluminum one, you had wicked neck dive with that too, just because of where the weight was.
Depends. I mean, it was worse than the other guitars I have, but it wasn't as bad as because the placement of the actual strap and everything,
Right.
it's just makes a big difference.
You know a little tip I learned for neck dive? This is for all you guitar players at home. Take some tire weights and put them in your compartment, put it inside the
I've
top
heard
compartment. Like the ones you would put on like for an alignment on a vehicle.
that. Yeah.
You just stick it right inside your
And in the
pots
control
and then you
cavity.
you can slowly build it up, and then you can find the perfect fulcrum, and it'll
Yep.
level out your
Nice.
neck dive. So hey,
There you go.
your boy
There you
Jeremy
go.
helping you out. Sorry, Mod. Fuck a bass player.
yeah, you learned something on this show.
See, there we go. It's,
Gear corner with.
this is what he gets paid for.
yeah, exactly.
I'm endorsed by Goodrich.
So I mean, I don't know. I just like it, and it's going on weight. This thing weighs probably 8 pounds. It's
The Narwhal does.
It's so light. It's
Yeah, I felt it
ridiculous.
at the show.
Yeah.
That thing was freaking. I mean, it was.
It's like picking up a feather,
Yeah,
man.
it was-
Like it's ridiculous.
I'll have to. Next time we rip, I'll have to check it
Yeah,
out. What
for sure.
pickups are in that?
It's just his
It's
design.
like the Dunnable ones.
Yeah, I wanted to go full like P90s just because I really like the like spring and the snappiness that you get with something that's closer to a single coil.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I was like, I don't know if that's gonna get the amount of like gain and grit that I want out of something. So I was like, I'll go that with the neck. Bridge, I'll go more traditional humbucker. So I got whatever his higher output pickup is in
Yeah.
the bridge. And honestly, works great. Works really good. I got just a volume knob because I fiddle with the volume while we're playing, even though it's always up all the way. I don't know why I fiddle with it.
Yeah, just to make sure it's up all the way. I
Yeah.
do that too. I always had that tendency.
I do too. It's like
to
I'm full blast. I think
Yeah.
it's from like tracking demos at my house. Like I'm always like nonstop
Rolling off. And,
turning
Well-
it down, turning it up, turning it up. So I'm always like subconsciously being like,
Is
before
it
I'm
on?
like,
Is it
okay,
on?
like
yeah,
I literally know I'm at full blast, but I'm not picking right now, so I better double check.
yeah.
yeah,
That's still
exactly.
full blast.
And I don't know about you guys, but sometimes when you play live, like I've changed my picking to like trying to close my pinky, but sometimes when I'm on that E string, it just gives me a better like counterbalance.
Yep.
And sometimes I'll hit that accidentally and it'll roll off a little bit. So I'm
Mhm.
always like trying to roll it back on because if not, then obviously you're fucking turned down. So it's
Right.
like, oh well, why does my guitar sound weird? And then you roll it back up, so you always kind of miss maybe a couple notes here or there. Or whatever,
Yeah, you miss the dynamics and
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah.
So, well, we do got to wrap up here shortly, but what does you guys' practice schedule look like?
It's fluid.
Yeah,
Because I mean, obviously, we both have normal lives outside of everything. I mean, he's got 2 kids and and a wife and family and stuff, and I'm just alone.
All
But-
we got are riffs and
Yeah.
guitars.
So we usually jam once a week.
okay. So
when
try to keep it consistent at least once a week, or
when
Yeah.
we're tracking, it gets a little weird. Like maybe Mike won't show up if we're just doing guitars that day, or like I'm supposed to meet up with Mike after this to track bass, but James isn't going to be there, kind
Yeah.
of thing. So yeah.
Yeah, it just depends on everyone's schedule. I mean, I get busier at my job seasonally.
yeah.
So like right now during like the early winter and like very early spring, I usually don't have a whole lot going on. It's a lot slower at work. But then once later spring and mostly summer, you get really busy. So I have a little less time to be able to like, so there might be a week that we skip just because I either don't have the time or I'm just exhausted, and I'm just like, I just can't bring what, we need to be able to write or to do whatever we're doing.
And I literally just changed jobs to work more part-time so I can play more music.
Nice.
Yeah.
Good
I,
call.
But
Good
then
call.
you got to add the drive too, because you're Grand Rapids based, right?
Yeah.
So then you got to
Well-
add that on as well, right? So,
yeah, I mean, it's a
yeah.
thing, but I personally don't mind. It's in service to being able to, do the stuff that we like to do. I
Yeah.
don't mind the travel
Right.
because realistically, I mean, it's only full-time commute is only probably a little over an hour, there and back.
That's not bad at all.
Well, and,
So-
and bringing them into my space because we jam in my little recording
Right.
room, so it's like I frequently will just record the new jam or whatever and just throw it up in the drive, and he can listen to it in the car on the way home or whatever, and it just makes like spontaneous writing stick better.
Yeah.
I
Oh, yeah,
guess.
for sure.
Like,
Well,
you
your
know.
ideas are there, so as he's
Yeah.
driving home, even he can be like, "I'm gonna dig into that more this next
Yeah.
week." And
Yeah.
like, let's flesh that idea out more.
Yeah.
I really
Yeah.
like that, or like, I already don't like it, so like, we'll probably just move on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's just and then obviously like when I'm home, I have like a little practice. I usually don't get the full amps out at home.
No 612s at home.
Just lugging them up the stairs just
Yeah.
to jam.
I gotta get this riff out of me.
Yeah, well, I do have them in
Uh.
my apartment, but I very rarely take the opportunity to really.
He
do
also
anything
has an
for 'em.
elevator, so
I do have an
Oh,
elevator.
that helps.
Yeah. So it's a little less work, but it's yeah. I don't know. I just don't. I would rather be able to make it more casual and have stuff that that is fluid for our lives, so that it's less stress on us being like, we need to do this, we need to hit this deadline. And I don't know. I mean, I feel like at a certain age, it's one of those things where like you don't want it to feel like your job all the time either.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the more you stress about it, the more it feels like that.
Yeah, for sure.
I remember Jay and Mod were talking on a podcast. It was an earlier one, just talking about like changing that perspective from outcome to just like the experience. Like, and if you do
Mhm.
that, it's like you can get so much more joy out of it. Because if you're like, we got to get this out before, it's like,
Yeah.
why? Why do we have to do that? Like, we're not like, who's telling us that? It's
Right.
ourselves. Like, just have fun with it.
Yeah. At the end of the day, you're doing it for yourselves and like,
Yeah.
for you guys, the other 2 guys or the other 3 guys or the other 4 guys in the band, right? At the end
Yeah.
of the day, like, and if someone digs it or someone wants to talk about it or, be like, hey, that was cool, that's just a fucking added bonus, right? Or,
Yeah.
or wear your shirt or whatever it is. Like, that's just all the little things that come with it. But at the end of the day, you're making shit because you want to make it, because
Yeah.
you like to create and you want to listen to it back and be like, that's fucking cool. I'm glad we did that, So
For sure.
when you start looking at it that way, I think things just come together a lot better, and, and you enjoy it more too, instead of like all this pressure of like, oh, we need to do A, B, and C to get this, that, and the other thing. And I just feel like that the universe doesn't work that way either. Like when you start putting all your heart and soul into it and you don't expect anything back, that's when things start coming back. That's at least that's what I believe.
Well, and like to your point, from a mixing standpoint, by the time I've heard it 40,000 times and don't want to hear the damn song anymore, that's when it's time to release it and let other people deal with it. But when when I do circle back around, which I usually give it a couple weeks after release before I listen to them again, when I do circle back around, what I mostly remember is all those times in the studio. You know what I mean? It's like it just hits that, like it reminds me about the journey.
For sure.
Exactly. So before we wrap this up, what is next for Phantom? Big question.
So we had already kind of talked a little bit about it. We're currently writing
tracking.
Yeah, we're tracking right now for a single release. I think the plan is, if everything is that we're going to try and release this single and press it on a 7-inch. Is the plan right now. Have one side be the new track,
and
the
the other side be a rework and re-record of Mayrune's demo.
Yeah, from the Mayrune's demo. So that's at least right now, and I think we're going to try and focus more on that model of doing singles for right now, just because, I don't know, since we're trying to be more fluid with our output, we want to be able to do it when inspiration strikes, and rather than feeling like, oh, we have to write for the album, we have to write for this. So I mean, that's kind of the thought process that we want to be able to have when it comes to that.
And we'll hopefully have multiple different kinds of supporting media for these singles, like music videos, yada yada yada.
Okay. So and then obviously, like, we want to be able to play some shows and stuff to support it when we can and whatnot. I mean, our model that we've kind of had is that we'll try and do like a show a month, something like that, just to kind of make it work with everybody's schedule. And I mean, like we were saying, I mean, we don't feel like we need to necessarily be, road warriors about it just yet, and just kind of get out there and get people to be able to at least check it out,
We've mostly gigged in GR. The Heart on Your Sleeve Fest was the second gig besides Rake Beer Project that we've played in Muskegon, and that room was so damn electric with nostalgia. I gave myself whiplash and a bangover that I'm still feeling today.
Nice.
Yeah,
but that got me so excited for more shows closer to us, man.
Yeah, I'm definitely hoping that they are able to get more in Muskegon going on. I mean, I know that we briefly talked about it at the fest, but like, I don't know, between that, like us coming to Rake for the Rake show, was just like not expected at all, the turnout. I mean, like,
that was a sick show. I was there too.
Yep.
I was there too.
No big deal.
I try to make every Phantom gig.
But we were just like, we got there, and once the first band played, and we were just like, man, the turnout is Helm's Deep. Yeah, which
Harley's band.
Yeah, Harley's band, sick. They're awesome. Very very riff focused.
Yeah,
very very cool stuff. But they once they started playing, I was like, man, this is a pretty solid turnout. And then like it just kind of developed from there.
It was packed.
Yeah, it was packed. It was surprising.
It was late October, and there were like 20, 30 people that had to just stand outside, and they just stood outside and stood there and listened. They couldn't even see bands, and they were just out there like headbanging.
Yeah, so I'm like, seeing that, and then obviously like the support for the Heart on Your Sleeve Fest, and like people want more stuff in Muskegon.
Yeah,
it's the interest is obviously there. Now it's just getting to the point where like venues will see we should start doing that, and
we're working on it. We'll talk after the episode. I got some ideas to float by you guys.
And then you got the credit union that place is going to. That's someone's house or something, ain't it? Or something?
It's an old credit union. It's across from where Bennett Pumps used to be in Muskegon.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, we're actually yet to gig there.
Yeah.
But
like I said, we'll talk after the air.
Nice.
I got a lot of ideas in my head, so we'll talk.
All right. Yeah. Hell yeah. But yeah, that's. I mean, just try and stay busy is, I guess, the plan.
Cool. Well, is there anything else you want to go over, Jeremy, before we wrap this up?
No, I
Got it
we
all?
could go on. We could go on.
could
with
go on.
gear,
Oh, I know.
Gear. and
Yeah,
stuff.
we could go on
Ooh,
forever.
boy.
And it's always the invitation's always open to come back when you guys got something else you want to promote or you want
Oh,
to
yeah.
chat some more
Yeah.
or you get a single out and you want to premiere it on the show. Like my good friends in Pain Divine did their whole EP on our show. So
Nice.
you know anything like that, the door's always open to you guys.
Hell
I
yeah.
consider you guys my metal brethren.
That's
because,
sweet.
you
Fuck
know,
yeah.
We go way back, so it's like you
Hell
know,
yeah.
I appreciate you guys taking the time to come on the show today and talk about your art, and we really appreciate that here at the Metal Maniacs.
Metal Maniacs.
For sure. I mean,
Oh.
thanks for having us out, man.
Of course,
I mean,
man.
you know, we just being able to, reconnect and everything
Yeah.
is awesome.
Yeah, for
Oh,
sure.
yeah.
So with that being said, much love to you guys. Check out Phantom. Keep it metal.
Peace.
Peace.
Metal Maniacs.
Thank you so much for checking out the episode. Be sure to hit that like button and give us a share.
Yeah, and if you enjoyed our podcast today, please give it a rating on your streaming service to help us gain some exposure.
And if you really enjoyed the show, please give us a follow or hit that subscribe button and come hang out with us every week. And remember, keep it metal.